September board meeting for Ignite CDA. If you would all rise and help me with the Pledge of Allegiance. I
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you all.
There we go.
It's time for public comment. Is there any public comment? Seeing none, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent calendar.
I make a motion to approve the consent calendar, including the August 21st, 2024 board meeting minutes, the approval of the district monthly financial statements, and the approval of the agency payables as submitted.
I'll second.
Moved and seconded. Any comments, questions, concerns? All in favor?
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Executive Director report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to invite Mr. Phil Boyd from Welch Comer Engineers up to share an Atlas project update and to discuss the Phase 3 strategy.
Welcome, Mr. Boyd.
Chairman Hoskins and board members and Tony. Pretty brief update today. The Phase 2B, the landscaping work is ongoing. If you've been out there and looked at it, you can kind of see a little bit of improvements out there. The Phase 3 Atlas Hall is complete. And then we're just working on the entry monument signs. The board had approved that last week, and so we're working for the plan updates. We're also, I've reached out to DeChase Mixes, which is the property owner on the west side of Atlas Road that we'll need an easement from. So that's the status of the project. I did bring a couple of aerial photos. We recently flew the site, and so I just wanted to share them with the board because I think these are, if you guys don't get out there routinely, it's nice to kind of see what's happening out there. To give you a reference point, here's Southeast Way. This is Heartwood. This is Topsaw. And so the SMOC development team has these parcels. They also have these down here. So you can see they're underway. Stancraft is building these for the SMOC team. So you can see they're well underway down here. And this is another photo that I put in that I wanted to show the hill climb. And the board might remember one of the things that we did as part of the PUD was pedestrian circulation. You did a nice shared use path on the west side, so you can come right off of Southeast Way, head down without interacting with any of the vehicles. This is a pedestrian route that you can come right off of the shared use path that's on the south side of Southeast Way and walk all the way down to the waterfront park. This is just the edge of the toll development here. So I wanted to just highlight that segment. That'll get landscaped and become part of the HOA maintenance responsibility.
So that's the area where the old administrative buildings were.
Oh, yeah. Boy, good
mill.
memory.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been right up in here.
Yep.
Yeah.
Man,
Yeah, that's right.
beautiful.
This is looking towards the northeast, and here's the Toll Brothers. The reason I kind of threw this photo in is you can see how they have these rooftop decks, and the reason that they had made these flat is so you could see over these onto the hillside. This is Area 13, which DeChase Mixes has that parcel. Area 5A, which hasn't been sold yet. This is the Butler development over here. These are single-family units here, and then there's townhome style scheduled for there. And again, the SMOC product there, and you can see Phase 3 in the background.
Mount Hink.
Mount Hink, old Mount Hink. And then this is just further west. You guys have seen these before. This is primarily the Atlas Building Group product down here. The Butler development team has this piece. This is Area 8. You can see they finished a lot of their product there. And then the north side of this is also twin homes on the north side. There's an alley back in here, and then the DeChase Mixes multifamily back there. Any questions on that?
Great photos.
Okay. So moving on to the next topic, you guys, and along the Prairie Trail, so the Prairie Trail is here. These are twin homes and then in a couple locations triplexes, because that's what fits in there. And you can probably tell, looking at this, we're maximizing density. Because, as you guys know, maximizing density drives down per lot cost. And then there's a townhome configuration here, which also has an alternate to have a fire station in it, which we don't know that the city is interested in that, but we continue to carry that forward as a potential so as to not give them the option for that, should they decide they want that there. And when we move forward with the PUD, we'll ask for that civic use in kind of a residential area. So that's the layout we've been working with. Heartland has done, the real estate advisor has done a bunch of analytical work, and we've looked at the different potential revenue streams, and then, of course, the construction costs for it's very daunting to hear that behind me. The construction costs for the development improvements, and then both Heartland and Hillary Patterson had weighed in on the ideas of where we might put attainable housing. This was the inspiration for that courtyard idea. This is actually something that came out of Hillary's bag of tricks, and this might have been a couple of years ago, where we thought, gosh, that would be a really nice development. It may not ultimately be that architecturally nice simply because of the price point, but the idea of putting attainable housing in this courtyard area, because it still would be very nice, the product would look the same as the neighborhood. This shows a 25% attainable housing configuration, and this shows what 50% attainable housing would look like, and that's essentially half of the 71 units that are in there. Anything on that, Tony, I'm missing? Okay. And so obviously then the next question is, well, what does it do to the pro forma? And you guys have this in your memo and you've seen it. Here's the estimated land sale revenue at market rate, attainable, 25% attainable, 50% attainable. The development costs are the same, and this is just for the infrastructure part of it. And then the estimated net revenue from the project by the time you sell the house, develop the property, how much money is left over. And then, and you can see we go from market rate, where we're generating positive net revenue, to 50% attainable, where we're negative, we're in the hole. We did want to show also the increment, because in theory, the increment would have an impact if a portion of it was attainable. So here's market rate, increment, attainable, and 50% attainable.
Annual, is that an annual thing?
Yes. Yeah.
I might just add a point here. So when Phil says we're in the negative, we're just looking at the phase 3 side here. We just wanted to kind of give you a snapshot of the decision you'll need to make on this 9-acre piece of real estate. The overall project is very healthy, so we're not going to be losing money on the project itself, but theoretically we could lose money on this development, just on this 9 acres. So we just want to kind of give you that clarity, but overall the district is very healthy, and we can afford a 50% attainable strategy if you'd like to go there.
Tony, you might want to just talk about, yes, it's a negative in phase 3, but the amount of money that we have available in total from the entire Atlas district, even if we went to 50%.
Yes, so we definitely have, the wealth in the district is
substantial.
plenty to settle any debt obligations that we may have, that we choose to reimburse the city. We need to reimburse our river district, but the district is healthy enough to absorb this loss on the phase 3 side if you want to go to 50%.
Thank you, Tony.
And I had a question on that potential fire station site. How large is that? And also, it seemed like maybe there was an issue of, could they get out of there, or is the grade right? And with those figures that you just showed of how much would make or not make, how is that, those 4 townhouses or whatever, are they calculated into that?
Okay, so I'll address the first question first. The configuration that we originally had in here would require off-site improvements to Southeast Way here. The size of the fire station we concepted in the plan, we previously showed it to the board, is the same fire station that's up on Atlas Road. So we took that fire station footprint.
Okay.
laid it into here. The circulation route for the fire trucks would be when they're coming into the station, they would come, turn into Heartwood, pull through their bays, because that's the way the Atlas one
Right.
works. They do a pull into the bay, and then when there's a fire, they need to exit. So you would, you would exit out this way. Troy Tymason, the city administrator, has asked us to continue to advance that option in the event they want to see it happen there. At some point, we'll have to say it's time to fish or cut bait on it.
Any other questions?
A question. How would the RFP process work if it's kind of chopped up in either?
Them and fee developer who just gets a fixed fee associated with the cost to go in and develop all this, where they're not maximizing their profit. But they would have to be somebody that was experienced dealing with attainable housing and selling it that way. So those are all the questions that we intend to answer pending the discussion tonight, if it's anything other than go market rate. So that's not a complete answer, but
Okay.
And some organizations may just want bare dirt transferred to them for attainable, then they bring their own builders in to build to our specs. So there's a lot of kind of research, as Phil indicates, that we need to do once we kind of get on a certain path here about what's the best methodology to achieve our goals.
So piggybacking on what Brennan was talking about, would it make more sense instead of a percentage to, if it's certain developers, if we're doing an RFP for each, to have whatever that northern portion is and whatever that southern portion is, based on the parcels versus a percentage?
so the way that it shakes out is the percentage works out to those parcels. So just the numbers happen to work out, that this is 25%, and maybe it's 24.65%, but we rounded it. And then when you add in these, it takes you to 50%. But we would only do it as, it's either this group of parcels would be RFP'd or developed as attainable, or, that is correct.
On
And just
track.
as a reference point, when Heartland estimated the cost of constructing just the home part, it's estimated at $300 a square foot, which that number was gleaned from talking to the builders in the neighborhood, so to speak. So I think that is an example of your point, Commissioner Garcia, is that we're not decreasing the quality of the home product. We're simply providing the land to drive the cost down at no cost.
And I think a good point would be, or just a comment, is I just did a tour with the city of Post Falls, and they were showing us all the variation of housing that they have, the different housing types, which was really, really great. And then they did have the cottage type housing. And so to see that, and some of the more deed restricted housing as well, and you couldn't tell the difference. So I think it's important to, to your
I'm
point,
trying to
is to
highlight it.
educate it, is to educate that the fact of it is it'll still look like a good product.
And I had one more question, maybe kind of a question of semantics, but I just picked up, at one point, this kind of thing, and was talked about, affordable housing, and it has one connotation, and workforce is different, but now I think I heard you say attainable housing. Is that kind of the next evolution, or just something you made up, or?
That's an excellent observation. I'm using the word I've been told to use.
Oh, well, I think it makes
So the attainable term comes from Urban Land Institute. That's just one of the terms they use, but it's all synonymous. Affordable,
Yeah.
local workforce housing,
But I still
whatever
think I like the
terminology.
sound of that, yeah.
That's the point of it.
Hopeful, yeah.
Go ahead.
Phil, and, would the next phase, once you get an idea from the board, which direction or how deeply we want to go into this, is there, I know there's demand for it from the homeowner standpoint. Do we know or have any feeling from Heartland on demand from a builder standpoint or capacity of partnerships for the 50 versus the 25%? Or is that part of the next phase?
Well, it is, and I don't think that, one of the things we anticipate from a schedule standpoint, if the board were say, we want to go down the attainable route, that's got a a body of administrative work ahead of it over the next 2 or 3 or 4 months in identifying partners. Then we are gonna work through the PUD process, get the entitlements for the property, then you have to go build the infrastructure. If the board were to say we would just wanna go market rate, then we would start that process tomorrow. We wouldn't, so it would shorten up the schedule. So I think the schedule would be longer if we go attainable, but it will also give us opportunity to allow the remainder, the existing product that's in Atlas to be absorbed. So as that product gets absorbed by the developers that have done that, we anticipate that they may be certainly interested in the market rate areas over here, and then potentially depending on how this shakes out. So I know, I'm not sure if I'm answering your question directly, but
Close
it's one of the areas, again, where we intend to flesh out. We are mindful of,
And seeing the larger picture, I think that since we can afford to do the 50%, I think we should do the 50%. And I think it will be a good pilot program to help us with maybe potential future projects.
I'm going to agree, because I think when we first started this discussion, I was the one saying 50%, and everyone was all like, whoa, no, we're not gonna. And so I'm still on board, and I'm getting more comfortable with it. I felt like I was a little on the edge when I said it at the beginning, and now I'm feeling a lot more comfortable about saying I'd like to go on the higher end of this housing and provide opportunities for.
This could be something very unique and could be really good.
So Olivia, if that's a recommendation, why don't you make a motion? So
Well, I don't know that it's on the agenda.
Not marked as an action item.
It's not an action item.
Direction.
So we just want direction as all you do.
Yeah.
So we did look at the performance on this through finance, and I agree with Olivia. It fits very well with the mission of Ignite.
I would agree, and we've kind of punted density and attainable housing in this project, and this seems like an opportunity without a huge downside. I mean, even the increment is pretty close. So I see this as kind of our opportunity, and it seems like that 50% versus just that north part would be more interesting from a developer perspective, to tie those two sections together. They're kind of, it just seems like a natural
No, that's a good point.
approach. And I don't know what that distance is. I don't have my magnifying glass, but it seems like a nice tidy section that would be more unified if it's a single developer or a single design than cutting it in half and splitting it up.
There's been some really good work done in what's called cottage home industry, of taking something of this nature with a central courtyard and doing a cohesive project. And doing the 50% where you're doing the whole thing and not just a
Yeah.
portion of it and opening it up, I think that increases the possibility of a more cohesive and creative process. Yeah.
And then just, yeah, I think you guys, I mentioned before, you'll have a great bullet point for your next annual report as far as working on now attainable housing and stuff. And also I can, I'm always kind of looking optimistic, but I mean, there might be a perfect storm of that kind of timeline down the road, and with that next interest rate that comes down, and if it gets, under 5% or who knows, but I mean, for people who have, the price point plus if the interest, people, because there's got to be some, we know there's pent up demand out there, so anyway, yep, sounds good.
I would agree with the 50%. I'm not as wise as Sarah, because I was leaning the other way myself, but it looks like we can afford it, with the project as a whole, and as Dan just said, the need out there is great. And so this would be our small portion, and we could help do that, so. Any other comment?
Mr. Chairman, I would add a few comments perhaps, and just trying to look at the numbers of what we're doing. I think the statement of attainable housing is admirable, and I support it completely. At 120% of median income is a little higher than I think we might want to shoot for, but trying to find that balance point is tricky. Just to run the numbers, it's interesting to consider what we as a community are trying to trying to value a social good here, which is the attainability of our workforce to be in a mixed income community like this, to have the opportunities that are part of what we're trying to do as an organization, which is about $100,000 a lot. It's basically the value we're giving up in that case. And so I'm just trying to think through the opportunities to extrapolate this model, to do this in other places, but it's a surprisingly large number to me to completely offset the value of the land cost in a case like this to achieve the 120%. I wondered about trying to tweak the numbers a little bit so we'd end up with zero at net revenue. I mean, $10,000 a lot compared to $100,000 a lot is still a very affordable project. Maybe trying to get to a point where there's not red ink on the income statement. It just makes me a little bit uncomfortable there. And I'm trying to make sure that we're trying to meet the needs of all the different stakeholders of the organization in addition to the community benefits that we're trying to provide.
Just a clarifying note on that, because I think there may be opportunity. This 120% of AMI is for a single member household. If we go to the dual member household number, that 120 goes down towards, I think we calculated it maybe at 80 or 90% of two income AMI. And so I think, Commissioner Meyer, we could game that scenario out in future ones to say, what does it look like to make sure we're not losing money, and here's what the AMI would be as we get more accurate information, because we're currently doing estimates. So we can certainly run that as a future scenario.
It'd be interesting to see what a scenario looks like with that, to try to come out dead even with the best forecast we get as we refine the model. I think I would vote to support 50% as our target, but try to mess around with that. Because at 1,400 square feet, 3-bedroom, 2-bath, I think that can be an appropriate, family 2-income kind of a substitute. But trying to get to zero would make me feel a little bit better.
Yeah, you bet.
Yes, it's true.
Okay. All right. Well, I think we have our direction. That's all I have, Chairman Hoskins, unless there's other questions. Very
Thanks,
good.
Bill.
Thank you.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman.
Thanks, Tony. Next on the agenda is the election of officers.
So I will make a recommendation here, because the rumor is that our illustrious leaders are going to stay on for another year. So I would like to make a motion to nominate Scott and Olivia to be chair and vice chair for the 2024-2025 year.
I will second that.
Amen.
Any other comment, questions, or concerns?
I move that we close all other nominations and vote unanimously for these two.
All in
Second.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I didn't hear any. That motion
Thank you.
carries. Thanks, Mick. Next up is board commissioner comments. I have one or two. This Dan's last day. We're going to miss you and your wisdom, and
Okay. Yep. Well, I appreciate.
well on your next
yeah.
adventure.
Yeah, if I could hum better, I'd hum a few bars of thanks for the memories, but it's been a very enjoyable time. I had looked forward to, being able to do this sometime, and, it's meaningful to me that I feel like got to be a part of some really significant things. I mean, including that row of stuff down, by the fort grounds. And so we've done a number of things. So appreciate that. And, with where you're going and, I guess also you never know what the future holds. I've heard sometimes it's even possible to come back. So, so who knows? But anyway, yeah, I appreciate it. So
Thanks. Yeah,
yep,
Love Park Avenue,
Yep.
little subdivision looks great, doesn't it?
Yep.
But thanks very much for all you've done.
Sure.
Thank you, Dan.
And also the wizard in the
Oh, yeah.
broadcast booth, Jeff Crow, is his last board meeting with us also. Jeff, thanks for all of your technical expertise. And we're going to miss you. Anybody else? I'd like to hear a motion then to enter the executive session.
Wording. I would like to make a motion to enter into executive session pursuant to Idaho Code Section 74-206 subsection 1B to consider the evaluation of the Ignite CDA Executive Director.
I will second.
Roll call, please, Tony.
Jester?
Aye.
Arman?
Yes.
Garcia?
Yes?
Metz?
Yes.
Hoskins?
Yes.
Mandel?
Yes.
English?
Yes.
Meyer?
Yes.
We're in executive session, and Jeff, that's a wrap.
Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you, Jeff.